Good morning, John Muchler here, pastor at the Ferndale Alliance Church, and we have been having some fun with Matthew 5:13, the words of Jesus when he looks at his disciples. He looks at us and he says, "You are the salt of the earth." And this has to be the golden age of biblical study resources with books and commentaries and endless online helps and resources. Just down the street in our backyard in Bellingham is the finest Bible software company in the world, Faith Life. But for this subject of salt, we are going to the expert on salt here in the United States. That's right, the largest salt company in the United States, the Morton Salt Company. We all remember growing up with Morton Salt. They've been around forever. The little girl with the umbrella. Well, they have a great website, which you can find very easily. And there they have some interesting facts about salt. So I'm going to read some of them to you, and then we'll sort of apply them a little bit to the Christian life. The title of the article there at Morton Salt is Salt Through the Ages. The first written reference to salt is found in the book of Job, and that's Job chapter 6, verse 6, recorded about 2,250 years before Christ. And there are some 31 other references to salt in the Bible, the most famous being the turning into a pillar of salt of Lot's wife. From ancient times to the present, the importance of salt to humans and animals has been recognized. Thousands of years ago, animals created paths to salt licks, and men followed them seeking game and salt. Their trails became roads, and beside the roads, settlements grew. These settlements became cities and nations. So we can say that as salt, we advance civilization. If we're the salt of the earth, our job in part is to improve society. He gives an example here. Ancient Britons used to carry their crude salt by pack train from Cheshire to southern England, where they were often forced to delay their journey until the high tides of the Thames River subsided. There, a village known as Westminster grew up, and later Westminster became London. Salt has greatly influenced the political and economic history of the world. Every civilization has had its salt lore, fascinating superstitions and legends that have been handed down, sometimes very reverently and sometimes tongue-in-cheek. Roman soldiers, by the way, were paid salt money. It was called salarium. We get the word salt, so, or they're the same root word, salt, salarium, and we get the word salary. And that's how they were paid. The Roman soldiers knew how valuable it was as a currency, but also for their help, and they were happy to receive that as payment. It says that the early Greeks worshipped salt no less than the sun, and had a saying that no one should trust a man without first eating a peck of salt with him. The moral being that by the time one had shared some salt with another person, they would no longer be strangers. Much like how we might share a latte or a beer with someone and signifying our friendship with them. And of course, Christianity is a great body of friendship and fellowship. There's a widespread superstition that spilling salt brings bad luck. It is believed to have originated with the overturned salt shaker in front of the traitor Judas Iscariot in the Last Supper, an incident immortalized in Leonardo da Vinci's famous painting. If you search for that painting, just search the Last Supper, the fourth man from your left is Judas. His head is lower than all the other disciples, likely signifying his lower status, but off his arm there is a shaker of salt that's spilt over, and the salt can be seen on the table. An Old English belief has it that every grain of salt spilled represents future tears. I can see that. We know that our eyes are the tears of our eyes are salty, and perhaps this is a suggestion from an earlier verse in chapter 5 that says, "Blessed are those who mourn." Blessed is a blessing to mourning, and mourning comes about because we are grieved over our own sin and our own heartbreak towards God, our own alienation, guilt, but also our sadness when people we love fail and have problems and struggle, and we grieve for them. We also grieve for the world. So those tears represent, I think, kind of the compassionate side of our lives that God has built into us to grieve over the things that God grieves about. It goes on and says that the French would throw a little salt behind them, probably over their shoulder, in order to hit the devil in the eye. You don't want to get salt in your eye, do you? But the idea is that it prevented further mischief from Satan and from evil. So something bad happens, you think it's the devil, you toss some salt behind you, it gets in his eye, and he leaves you alone. Perhaps if we wanted to stretch a point a bit, that we are the salt of the earth. We are the resistance against evil, demons and Satan and all sorts of stuff that those that want those hidden powers that want to work to hurt mankind. The United States has had its battles over salt. In 1777, Lord Howe of the British made a successful attempt to capture General Washington's stock of salt. And during the War of 1812, the Second American Revolution, some would say, with England, it became very difficult to obtain salt from abroad. And because of this, a commercial production center began in Syracuse, New York. Now, let's continue with that. And during the Civil War, Syracuse production freed the North of all of its salt problems. However, in the South, in the middle of the Civil War, the Southerners could not buy salt at any price. And had the South been able to protect its salt factories in Virginia and its salt deposits along the Louisiana Gulf Coast, the war between the states might have ended differently. Finally, there is a phrase that's used a lot: he is not worth his salt, or he is worth his salt. It's a common expression. It may have originated with the ancient Greeks about the time of Christ, where salt was traded for slaves. Slaves were purchased with salt. And so my last suggestion here, if we want to just have a little fun with this, is that we are the salt of the earth. We are the valuable commodity that God uses to free slaves. Now, there are literal slaves around the world. There is the child sex trade that's near global, and there are ministries and organizations that do their best to deliver and rescue people from a horrible fate of the worst kind of slavery. But perhaps closer to home is that we are those that help free people from their own bondage to sin and guilt and self. That we have the message and the resources and the passion to help deliver people from their own slavery. We've been studying on Sunday mornings in church, and of course you're welcome to join us online, the Exodus and the 10 Commandments, which we have called 10 liberating principles. And all these commandments came after and out of slavery in Egypt for the Israelites. They were enslaved for some 400 years. God delivered them through Moses, and then to keep them free, he gave them these life-giving principles called the 10 Commandments. We're studying them. We hope you might join us. So a little bit more information on salt with some help from the Morton Salt Company. I hope you have a great day and a great week. Thank you for joining us.